I told you before about the reason for using the oversized artboard was because Illustrator sometimes, for whatever reason, when you save a JPEG out from an image which is perfectly fitted to the artboard, you get a white line on one of the edges. Sometimes. Why? That makes no sense whatsoever to me. So I arbitrarily, in another mission, another Illustrator file, made the rectangle larger than the artboard. But there's nothing arbitrary about this because remember the perfect registration? If I turn the guides on, this registers right to that corner or right to this corner. The idea that that perfect registration is necessary because when you rotate in Photoshop, you want alignment. You want different colors to interact depending upon the blend mode to get different shades of gray in order to create more interesting geometry than just the pure, cubes that we have here. Now, the size of this. In Illustrator, when you save out the JPEG, it saves out the size of the artboard. When you save this pattern, when you select it and save it and take it over to Photoshop, Photoshop takes the entire pattern. It ignores the artboard. Whatever you select from Illustrator goes with it when you copy and paste into Photoshop. Even if you have a clipping mask, for those of you who know what that is, that hides everything else. So, the artboard itself, these numbers should be very familiar to you, 2560 by 1440. That's the size, a good size to use for a desktop picture for either your 4K iMacs or my 5K iMac. Full size, actual size, always better, but this works just fine. Now, for rotating this in Photoshop, it's not 2560 by 1440. This artboard, if I click away and then click on the rectangle that the pattern is applied to, notice these, 2592 by 1458. Pull out a pencil or open up Illustrator and make this. You need to resize from the center. This thing, see the registration point? See, I've got it right there in the center. So when I changed, that's the X and Y. When I changed the 2560 and 1440, I changed the width, locking, or I changed the height, I think is how I did it, the 1440. And I went up until I found two even whole numbers that were still 16 wide by 9 high. We maintain the aspect ratio. And why do they have to be even numbers? Because Illustrator can work to the 10,000th of a pixel. It's fabulous. It's math. Photoshop works with pixels. It fakes things when it has to do a fraction of a pixel. We don't want fake. We want exact. So this is the first even whole numbers that maintain the 16 by 9 ratio, which is, HD movies, most of your TVs at home, and the size of the iMac. The screen we're working on is 16 by 9. So that's the reason. And if you really want to understand this and this didn't make enough sense, well, talk to me and I will explain it in more detail. But this, until I tell you I'm an idiot and I made a mistake, is the perfect way to size this image in order to maintain the perfect relationship between height and width and the placement, the registration of your pattern in this larger rectangle so you can rotate in Photoshop and do those cool things to make the generative art that aligns perfectly. Is there a reason sometimes to have it not align perfectly? Absolutely, but you want it to not align perfectly according to a different form of math, maybe dead center here or here, in order to bisect this geometry. And then, yeah, could we go further? Is there other things? Of course there is. But this size of the artboard, the reason I made this a template and the reason I took so much time to make perfect guides that are directly in the center, and this artboard and the attributes that didn't work, the reason I did that so I could have one template to rule them all. This probably isn't it. But it's another step on the way toward making a digital asset that possibly could be marketed. This is my digital asset, one of the ideas I have in order to work with. I'm trying to lead by example, so you guys who are who paid the $250 gold for that product mission can start seeing a way to think about your own. How can you present it so it'd be the most useful to other people? Well, they're not going to be building it like you and I are, but as developers, you and I, we need to think about those things. So that's what this video is about.